Okay, I'll give it half a minute more and then we'll start seeing people connecting to their audios. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our second epilogue. I'm Tanya Singh, a PhD candidate at the University of New South Wales. I'm also one of the co-chairs of SNRN. Before I start introducing our panelists, I just wanted to shortly explain the idea behind epilogue. The name of the series is a play on words that combines epi as in epidemiology and log as in logging one's experience. With epilogue, we hope to create a platform where amazing people can describe and share their experiences and insights from which the SNRN hopefully can find a sense of validation, support, and inspiration. With the Young Conference in France, the AWPC conference in Malaysia, and the annual conference in Chile around the corner, we thought that the webinar today on the conference playbook, strategies for presenting, networking, and managing expectations would be a good idea to get some great advice on how to make the best out of the conference and to keep the nerves calm. And I couldn't think of a better panel than we have got today for this purpose. So let me start by introducing our panel. So Dr. Marine Savouré is a postdoctoral researcher at the ISGlobal Spain. She holds a PhD in epidemiology from the University of Paris-Saclay, France. Her research focuses on the effects of outdoor air pollution and green spaces on respiratory health outcomes. In the ISEE, she is the liaison of SNRN to the European chapter and is involved in the communication of the SNRN committee. This year, she is also involved in the organization of the European ISEE conference, which will take place in Rennes, France, next week. Dr. Max Aung is an assistant professor of environmental health at the USC CAC School of Medicine and a GPP environmental health fellow through Harvard University. Max's research program focuses on investigating biological mechanisms linking environmental exposures to maternal and child health outcomes. He earned his MPH and PhD in environmental epidemiology from the University of Michigan School of Public Health. He previously served on the ISEE SNRN steering committee from 2019 to 2021. We're very lucky to have him on board today, despite his severe backache. So thanks, Max, for your commitment. And this is also the reason why he's not turned on the camera. So we hope you understand. And we're just still happy to have him on this panel today. Dr. Aina Roca Barceló received her master's in public health from the University of Girona, Spain, and her PhD in epidemiology from Imperial College of London, UK. Her research focuses on the health impacts of environmental hazards from air pollution to noise, with a particular interest on climate change, especially on temperature, on which she did her PhD. Currently working as a climate adaptation specialist support at Médecins Sans Frontières, she provides technical support to the teams on current and future climate change hazards and how to adapt to them. Like Max, she's also previously served on the SNRN steering committee. So as you can see, we have here quite some experienced people regarding ISEE on board. So let me jump into the straight question. And if the audience has any questions, please feel free to use the chat and we'll have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So if you could recall the first one or two conferences you attended, how was that experience? Is there anything you would have done differently? What did you worry most about? And how did actually things go in the end? Was it like, I recall my first conference where I was just very nervous and yeah, but things in the end turned out kind of okay. So if you guys could comment on that. And I don't know who wants to start. Maybe I'm just picking now. Marine, would you like to give us a shot?
Yes. So I've started my PhD just before the COVID-19 pandemic. So my first real conference in person was during my last year of PhD, and it was the ISC in 2021. And I had an oral presentation on the last day, and I was very stressed and nervous about speaking in English and by the questions. But at the end, at the ISC, there is a great atmosphere and people are friendly. So everything went smoothly. So it was like you, it was very okay. And I spent a nice time at the ISC. And I think I could have been less stressed during the other days of the conference. But I think that it's by doing more and more conference that you become less stressed. It's practice makes perfect, I guess. And also for the English, I know it's something very stressful when you're not a native speaker. But even if your grammar isn't perfect, it's not a big deal. For example, I know that my English is far from perfect, but it's never been a problem at a conference. So don't hesitate to speak up and to speak to people, even if your grammar is not perfect and if you have a strong French accent. And yeah, and also I had a question that seems silly, but I guess some people also wondering, how do you dress for a conference? That was one of my questions before this conference. And I guess the answer depends on the conference. I don't know what you think about it, but in general, you shouldn't be too casual, but for ISC conference, you don't have to be too formal with the dress. And in my experience, it's more the conference with the clinicians with very more formal clothes. But for ISC, I guess it's okay if you have a dress or something like that. Yeah.
I see Aina knocking a lot, so
yeah. No,
yeah.
it resonates. Yeah, I think I felt very similarly for my first conference. Mine was during my master's. I was also working part-time for a cancer registry, and I did my master's project in partnership with a cancer registry, and they invited me to present at a conference. And yeah, I remember being incredibly nervous, and mine was also at the end of the conference, which meant that, you know, you're so nervous, you're really not enjoying. And that's something that now I've learned, is to let go a little bit and, you know, allow myself to you know, be present the other days of the conference, because sometimes you'll be lucky and you'll be on the first session on the first day, and then you can breathe and it's great. But a lot of the times that's not going to be the case. So try to like compartmentalize a little bit the anxiety around it, and allow yourself to also be present for the rest of the days. And yeah, I mean, dress code is something that also is important to get right. You don't want to be too, I mean, at the end of the day, you can wear whatever you want, but you will feel more comfortable if you prepare a little bit and you understand a bit more the dress code. For ICE, as Maureen said, it's completely, I feel like it's one of the very relaxed conferences. Of course, don't come probably with flip-flops, and but you don't have to wear a suit either. So yeah, it's more relaxed.
Yeah, though I've seen, I think, in Taiwan in the conference last
Yeah,
year, some people
wear flip-flops. Yeah.
and I don't know what happened in Chile. It's winter, so we'll see. But I'll ask also some questions. You've touched on that, but some specific strategies on how to best prepare. So maybe we can discuss that a bit more. I don't know if Max wants to comment more on your experience. How did it go, and how did you feel about it? And yeah, any
sure.
learn from it?
Yeah, thanks both Marina and Aina for sharing your experiences. So my first conference was the ISCE. I think it was I want to say 2016 in Sydney, Australia. So around your neck of the woods, Tanya. I don't know if you were a student back then or not, but
No. I moved here in 2020. So yeah.
oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, so that was my first conference. I was a first year PhD student, and Yeah, I mean, similarly to Marina and Aina, I mean, it was definitely a little bit nerve-wracking. I felt like super nervous to like do my presentation. And this is the first time I'd ever been to ISCE like as a society as well. So I didn't really know that many people compared to now. Like now when I go, it's like a reunion, with dozens of friends. But at that time, I really just knew my small little network of Michigan people. Um, so I'd say going back, one thing I would definitely have done differently is maybe try to like interact with the different components of the society a little bit more, like the chapters, the breakout groups with the SNRN. I was a little bit shy back then, so I didn't really, interact with those that much. But I would say that can really help sort of, open the doors to like interacting and meeting new people. Um, and yeah, I guess like for you asked about like specific strategies to prepare. I think one thing I found helpful like during my second and third conferences after that first ICE is I would sometimes I would start like reaching out to folks ahead of the conference and let them know, hey, like if it's somebody I wanted to meet and interact with and network with, I would reach out to them ahead and let them know, like that I have a poster or an oral presentation on a topic that might be of interest to them, and I would, just let them know about it and that I would be enthusiastic to interact with them, in that setting or afterwards. So that's one thing, you can think about that can help expand your network a bit more.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Would Marina or Aina, would you add something on some strategies you use to prepare for conferences, like mentally or dress code or presentations even? Like I have like to discuss about that in a minute, but yeah.
Maybe I could pick up the networking point that Max raised, which I think that's a really good approach of like approaching whoever you want to discuss things with beforehand. Something that I also was recommended once is I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on conferences as being these moment where everything has to happen, and it's the moment where the world sees what you've done, and like it's very cathartic. But there's also an aspect, I mean, hopefully these would happen quite regularly. You'll have one maybe in your first year of PhD, in your second, your third. I know it depends for everyone, but it's not usually one only. So also think about what you want to be a bit strategic and think about what you want to get out of it, because maybe your first year PhD conference is not about, you're not looking to get a postdoc after it, you're not networking to get a job, you're just networking to maybe build the community and to get more involved in the society. So have an objective. What am I going for? Is it to understand this new society I'm part of and see how I can contribute and maybe create a community of people that do research on similar things as me, because down the line, these might be useful. And that's one that the way you're going to approach the conference will be very different if you are in your last year, for example, you're looking for a postdoc, and then you're in a more like, I need to get a job kind of a mood, and then you want to talk to the right people. And in that situation, my approach would be like, okay, I want to make a list of whoever is attending that I potentially would like to work with, and I want to make sure that I will reach out beforehand, as Max said, telling them when my poster or presentation is, and actually try to talk to them at some point during the conference. And then it's a different approach you take as well in terms of how you move around the conference. And it will allow you also, which for me, it's a really important thing, especially in conferences as large as the ICE conferences, to organize your schedule, because there are so many parallel sessions happening at once that it is quite overwhelming. And it's the kind of thing you are like, well, I'll just, figure it out and see what I feel like. But the reality is on the spot, you're so tired because you've been listening to people talk about interesting things for maybe 3 hours, and then you're like, do I go to this one or to that one, or should I be networking right now, or should I be going to these other social events? So maybe have an idea based on what your objective for the conference is, what you're going to prioritize. Are you going to prioritize networking during coffee breaks? Maybe then it's fine to miss a session because your priority for that conference is talking to people and networking. But maybe if it's more about learning what other people are doing, then yes, go to the sessions. So I would do, like, say, do the homework, understand what the conference is about and what your underlying objective for that conference is.
That's great advice. Maureen, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I totally agree. One of my advice is to read the program at the beginning to identify the session and the people who will present something at the conference, and eventually send them an email that you are interested in their work and you would like to meet them eventually. And I have also very practical advice, is I think you have to locate the conference venue and book a hotel close by the conference venue, because if you are far away from the conference venue, you will be tired and it will be complicated. So yeah, book an hotel close to the conference venue. And also you have to plan your trip in advance. See if you need a visa in advance, because it can take time. Prepare your luggage and your things. Make sure you have your presentation and your poster with you, and check if you need something to have access to internet or something like that, and whether your bank card can work, or if you need to have some cash. Yeah, plan your trip also.
Great, thanks. So I think what we're getting from the first round of discussion, that it's totally fine to be nervous. We were all nervous during our first conference. And I think that's something you just have to deal with in that sense, right? It will get better. But people at ISEE are usually very nice. So don't be too afraid. And yeah, be specific about what your goal is. Like, so what do you want to get out of the conference before you go? And accordingly, like, you know, decide what actions you're going to take or what you're going to focus. And it's also a good idea, as I think all three mentioned, to scan the people who are coming and to drop them an email and to ask, like, you know, if they would have a time for a coffee or a chat during a break. And also maybe following up to what Aina said, like, be clear about which sessions you would like to attend. Because if you do that during the conference, just on the day, you'll be just looking through the massive program and you'll just actually already lose time, 10 minutes or so, by just trying to understand what's going on and what you want to look at, and then the session's almost already done, right? So be clear on that, and then maybe every evening or every morning take half an hour or 20 minutes to scan the new day and on what you would like to focus. Would you guys have any specific strategies to prepare for a presentation? How to deal there also with, you know, the nervousness in that sense, question preps, yeah, practicing what should you do, what should you not do, what helps to...
Yeah, I could take a first jab at this, but you know, of course, it's really good idea to practice in front of your, you know, your lab colleagues and maybe, you know, a couple other people that are not as familiar with your work, so that you can kind of test, like, if your message is coming through to, like, you know, scientists, but maybe not scientists, like, exactly in your just, you know, your focus area. And then in terms of, like, resources, there's actually a couple books that I found to be incredibly helpful for my own presentation building skills. And I can drop them in the chat afterwards, but basically, like, these two books called Better Presentations and Better Visualizations by Jonathan Schwabish. They really helped me a lot with like simplifying complex ideas, being really thoughtful with how you use the design of your presentations, and just, overall like enhancing the presentation experience so that it's most useful for like the audience members.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add to that, which seems really silly, but you have to stick to the time and they will be strict about it. And it is really sad if you can't make it to the conclusions and discussions, because that's where you actually can shine and show why what you're doing matters. So do really practice a couple of times and make sure you leave enough room, because on the spot, you either might go faster and then you finish early and that's fine. But sometimes you'll rumble and you might get stuck in a concept and then take longer than you expected. So do leave some buffer time, because they will cut you off and then you have no other chance to finish that presentation. So yeah.
I will add a very basic advice is the first thing you have to ask yourself is, who are you talking to? Because depending on who you are talking to, you won't have the same vocabulary, the same type of presentation. And you have to, don't forget that what seems obvious to you is not necessarily obvious to others. And yeah, if you are in a congress with a lot of clinicians, they don't necessarily know complex statistical methods. But if you are in a congress with epidemiologists, they already know a lot of things about the exposures, for example. And yeah, as Max said, when you are preparing a presentation, I guess something that you have to do is to keep it simple, with a visual that is not too busy and a speech that is not complex either. And yes, you have to fit with the time you have available and the kind of presentation you have. Because, for example, at the ISE conference for oral presentations, you can have 10 minutes presentations, but also 5 minutes presentations. And depending of these types of presentations, you don't have the same format of presentation.
And do you guys have actually a preference for posters or oral presentations? Because they're two such different things. And yeah, I guess many of the SNRN members might have poster presentations. So any tips for how to make the best out of that?
I think maybe I'll just start on that, but I do prefer presentations, because I think sometimes, well, it's easier to engage in a conversation. You have everyone in one room and it gives you more of a chance to explain. But I do have to say that actually, like, a well-organized poster session can be incredibly successful, and you also have a much longer time period to engage. Having said that, the well-organized poster session, so that relies on the organization and you have less of a say. So I think make sure, if you do have a poster, make sure to do what Max said. Reach out to the people you want to see that come and see the poster. Make sure to let them know which session, what day, which room you're going to be at, and make sure to be there, because that's your opportunity to actually explain what the poster is about and engage in the conversation. And sometimes like that will happen naturally because the sessions are organized in a way that, I don't know, sometimes they'll do the sort of 2 minutes introduction poster sessions. So then people come around. But the reality is that a lot of times they're at lunchtime or at coffee time and you have everyone networking elsewhere. So you might not get a lot of people. And that doesn't mean that they're not interested in your work. That just means that they are networking with someone else and they got caught up in a conversation and they didn't have time to show up. So make sure to do some advertising of your poster before and during the session. Like, I remember, I don't know, now with the change to X, I don't know if it's still that common, but like Twitter within ICE was quite big. And so I remember like a lot of people posting, hey, my poster session is tomorrow. And like, I actually went to a lot of poster sessions because of that, because otherwise you have an ocean of hundreds and thousands of posters to go through on a list. And realistically, it's overwhelming after you spend so many times, like so many hours listening to presentations. But if someone who you know is like, oh yeah, I have a poster, or like someone who you know their work has a poster, I'll make an effort and go because I'm interested in that work. So make sure to advertise on social media or directly emailing people that you want to see there. And also when you talk to people, when you're networking, having coffee, make sure to drop it. Say, hey, yeah, I work on air pollution and I have a poster session tomorrow. Come chat to me and I'll walk you through my research. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice, Aina. I'll just say, you know, I dropped in a couple resources for those books. I think the books are actually pretty applicable to posters as well, because it's about, you know, content, you strategizing how to use the content in a finite amount of space, right? Like the poster sections, for example. And I also put in another really useful like YouTube video that also helped really inspire me to simplify my posters as well. Because it's, you know, similar to like a PowerPoint presentation, it's, you know, you have a lot of things that you want to say, but maybe, you know, focusing on what's the most important, reducing text, you know, and just like being parsimonious with the data that you're visualizing. And so like kind of to that end, I just wanted to also make like one small point, which is like, well, something that may seem simple, but like I have to also remind myself every time I give a presentation, is like, you know, when you do any visualizations or presenting of data, just remember that like your audience, they are seeing this for the first time. So like simple things like defining the axes of your figures, like it would just be amazing, you know, how sometimes you might forget that. But and I've seen that before too, like where, you know, like I'll be listening to a presentation and it's just like figure after figure and we're just, you know, assumed to understand it. But, you know, you really want to spoon feed your audience and take the time and care to like explain what is on the page, right? And so that it's not overwhelming for the audience.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. So what we get from this, I guess, is practice a lot, keep it simple, keep to the time, and make sure you explain all the plots very well, or even the statistics behind things. And if you're presenting a poster, make sure to advertise for it on social medias, but also when you're networking during the conference. Yes. Okay. Let's go to, oh yeah, that's maybe also a good reminder for people. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We touched a little bit on that already, but would you have some specific advice for networking and maybe potentially any nice story which came out of a great networking experience you cherish from conferences, or maybe even a bad one, like you made a total fool out of yourself and potentially learned something from it?
I can start if you want. So
Right.
personally, I'm very shy and I don't really like networking because I found it a bit forced. But I guess networking isn't just about talking to people in a very artificial way. And I think there are plenty of ways to network, even if you are shy. And I guess the first thing to do if you want to network very, very effectively is to help to organize part of the conference or to get involved in the scientific society, because you are guaranteed to meet a lot of people. And I've got a great network since I joined the SNRN, committee, and I met Tanya. So this is a very success story for me. And yeah, I also met a lot of people since I helping to organize the ISC Young Conference in June next week. And what's more, a tip for shy people, in this case, when you're organizing something, people will naturally come to talk to you. So normally you are in control of this kind of event. So you know what's going to happen and you will be busy. So this requires less effort to talk because you have something to talk about with people. And yeah, and if you don't want to organize a conference, you also have some opportunity to share a session, for example. Yes, there is a lot of opportunity for sessions sharing in a lot of conferences.
Nice.
Would you have anything to add, Max or Aina?
Max?
That's like, that covers quite a bit. I mean, I guess, you know, something that could be helpful is piggybacking or just like, you know, leaning in on your like networks, extended networks, sort of like, so, you know, if folks in your circle like know other people, you know, like feel, you know, like definitely like see if you can get introductions that way too. That really helps. And carving out time to, you know, maybe like for your breaks, you ask somebody to get coffee or something like that. Like, I think, you know, that's always a nice, more casual way of interacting.
Yeah. And on that note, also, like, of course, we're there all to talk about science, but also it's okay. I feel like sometimes there's this pressure that you feel like you don't want to talk to that person because you don't want to be like make a fool of yourself, and you maybe don't have, because you're tired, whatever, you don't have a very smart question to ask them. It's also okay to approach them and talk about football and the weather. They're human beings, they're people, and they also will appreciate a bit of a social discussion. You know what I mean? Like the coffee break's not, it's not like everyone has to be talking about their research constantly. So it's also okay to start the conversation with a very casual social conversation that will eventually then move to a more research based when you're more relaxed. But you don't have to come in with like these very smart, very clear question, because you might not always have it ready for everyone that you want to talk to. And maybe you miss their presentation, so you don't want to make a fool of yourself asking a very stupid question that maybe they actually explained during their presentation. So also don't, yeah, maybe think of that as also an option.
And
Yeah.
also,
Sorry.
sorry. Yeah,
Go
also
ahead.
if you're with your supervisor, you can take advantage of him or her to introduce you to other more senior researchers. So yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of conferences make efforts to organize social events so that people can meet. And I think it's a good idea to go to these events even if you don't anyone. Usually there are small icebreaker events organized. So yeah, go to the social events.
Yeah, and I think for the Young Conference next week, there are such events. And for the annual conference, we'll also have, I think, on the Monday evening, SNR and social event. We're still discussing in the background what it will be like or what we're planning, but make sure to attend those, because yeah, I think that's a very, very casual environment we offer then to the attendees to network and chat. And maybe you can also Google nice icebreaker questions somewhere. I should have maybe prepared that, but that doesn't, you know, focus on your research necessarily, and then you take it from there.
Maybe one more thing to add, and maybe Tanya, you want to devote a specific section on this, but ICE is a very nice environment, but like in everywhere in this world, you will always find people who might not be the nicest. They might ignore you, they might make a comment that offends you, or make a comment that it's maybe hurtful. A lot of times they maybe don't even have the time for you, or they'll tell you, yeah, we'll meet for coffee, and they don't show up. Yeah, these might happen, and it has happened, I think, to a lot of us at some point, and it will happen at some point in our careers. There's a combination of, you know, there's so much going on, people have other things in their heads. If they don't show up to that coffee break meeting, it might be because something else happened and I completely forgot. It doesn't mean that they don't value you, your research, you know, like, try it again. If they are also, if you are faced with a situation where like someone makes a offensive comment, also, you don't have to shut up. You can also, I know it's a complicated situation in conferences, but I mean, especially when you're giving presentations, sometimes the questions are, I mean, they're always very nice, but we've had situations where, you know, certain questions are a bit outside of what we would say it's adequate. And in those situations, you know, like, there's people around that organizers that will help you in those situations if that happens. So make sure, maybe if you don't want to call it out on the spot, to reach out to the organizers and say, well, in that session, this happened, because this is the kind of thing that we also want to avoid moving forward. And again, don't take it personally. It's not a reflection of them having anything against you personally. There's many reasons why they might have made that comment. But I just wanted to highlight that, because I think it can really hurt someone's feelings, and it can really set a tone on how you feel about conferences in general. And it shouldn't be, because it's usually not your problem, it's someone else. It's the other person's actually who's doing something wrong. So
thanks for raising that, Aina. Yeah, that unfortunately also happens with an ISEE, which is usually a good and friendly conference, and I've experienced it unfortunately with other people happening. But yeah, don't take it personally, and it's potentially also a great discussion point with other people to talk. Make sure you talk with others also in the conference about that and what happened and went about it. But hopefully it will not happen, but be prepared. Okay, another call for you guys, please. If you have any questions, put them in the chat, because I'm gonna ask you guys soon. So maybe another one, like, I think that happened to me quite a bit, that I find conferences quite overwhelming, and I'm like constantly like stressed and thinking, okay, how can I make the best out of it? What should I do? How do you strike the right balance between participating in the conference activities and taking breaks to recharge? Maybe you can have some tips what you guys specifically do, or you just go with the flow. But yeah, I wish I would have done it back then, because I was so exhausted.
I think the main thing is to not put too much pressure on yourself to attend everything. And if you feel yourself getting tired, don't hesitate to take a break and rest. It's not a big issue if you don't attend a session.
I agree. I think for me it helps, as we said before, planning a bit beforehand. And I will have, as I said, you know, priorities. So I'll be like, okay, this session, for whatever reason, for me it's key, maybe because whoever is presenting, I want to talk with them afterwards, and it's nice to have an excuse that, like, for example, having seen their presentation. So I'll mark a couple of sessions that I'm like, I do not want to miss this. And then for those, I will try to really stick to it, even if I'm a bit tired. And then for the rest, it's what you said. You have to also listen a bit your body, because you're going to be exhausted. And we tend to be really optimistic with our time and energy management. But the reality is, even like the socials are exhausting, because you're socializing with a lot of new people. So it's relaxed, but it's also not relaxed in a certain way. So, you know, and you're going to sleep very little. And then the next morning at 7 a.m., you might have a session, and it's a couple of days like this. So you know, and the stress and the anxiety. So also listen to your body. It's okay to miss a session, as Marianne said, and just make sure that the ones that you really care about for whatever reason it is, then yeah, those try to make the effort. Because otherwise what happens is if you try to push too much the sessions, then you have no time for networking or energy for networking, which might be the main reason why you're in that conference to start with.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you might not be fully yourself if you're overly tired and
Exactly.
say silly things. And don't forget the jet lag. That's also another layer on top.
Yeah, 100%.
Max, you wanted to say something?
You know, all of these points that Marine and Aina said are exactly on point. You know, you have to give yourself grace because it's overwhelming, you know, to sort of like to do all of that, right, and be present. So, you know, certainly give yourself time to recharge. And I'll just say that like as you go further and further in your careers, you're you might also face that like even though you're at conferences, you're not able to totally unplug from the rest of your responsibilities, as those will increase along your career. So, you know, like lately I've had to go to conferences where I'm like double booked or, you know, just totally, I can't make a whole day of one of the conference because I couldn't miss, you know, certain meetings. So that will happen to you eventually if it hasn't already. So, you know, also be mindful of baking, you know, that flexibility in. Because yeah, like, you know, just because you go to the conference doesn't mean the rest of the things that you have to do didn't, you know, don't just completely stop too.
Okay, great. Are there questions from people in the audience? You also feel free to turn on the mic if you don't want to put anything in the chat. As I mentioned already, Marine is going to be at the ISEE Young Conference next week, so you already know one person there. If you're going to go, make sure to. I think you will see her a lot also, but she's very much involved in the organization, and all the amazing newsletters you have been getting were designed by Marine. And Marine and me, we are also coming to the annual conference in Chile. Max, I think, is still considering, but at least, hey, you know, two people already, Marine and me. So feel free to approach us. We'll be, I guess, at the welcoming reception and obviously at the SNR networking event. So yeah, you can always come by, say hello and tag along if you're feeling a bit shy or are a bit lost. Yeah, I'll be running, I guess, like last year, crazily in the background, also organizing all kind of last minute things, but always happy to meet new people. Yeah, still no questions. I don't know if you guys have any. Otherwise, oh yes, I see a video turning
No,
on.
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to thank like all of you for this. I think it's very useful. It's gonna be my first conference in Rennes actually next week. I'm in the 4th year of my PhD. And anyway, there's been a bunch of events which explain why I haven't participated in a conference before, but it's really useful to be able to meet up with also new researchers who've experienced like those situations, like, you know, more or less recently. So I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say that, basically.
Thank you. Is there something you're specifically nervous about next week? We can help you to speak.
I think I'm lucky in the fact I have an oral presentation and I'm lucky that it's the first oral session in the conference, so I'm very grateful about that. But for me, it's more the networking. I relate really to Marine in that, and I feel very shy, and it's always difficult for me to start a conversation with someone. I know people like to talk about themselves, so usually when you ask them questions, it's easier to start a conversation, but I really feel self-conscious every time that I have to do that. So if you have any tip of little things that we can say to start a conversation, that would be helpful, I guess.
Yeah,
especially for ISE in Rennes, we have prepared some things to start conversation. You will have a badge with your specific interest in epidemiological research. So you can see what kind of interest the other people will have. And you can start networking with this kind of question or with this kind of interest and saying, oh, yeah, I have a specific interest for air pollution too. So I think we are all epidemiologists and we have a common passion for epidemiology and research. And I guess this is a very basic question or things you can say to someone is that what is your research topic and where are you come from? I guess this is something you can start with. And for the ISC Young Conference, we have also planned ice-breaking events. So it's not mandatory, but you can do it. And yeah.
Thank you very much.
And also to say, just to like acknowledge that you just now were the first one to turn on the camera and ask a question. So also to acknowledge that you are brave and courageous and you can do it, because everyone was with a camera off and you were the first one to raise your hand. So just to give you a positive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as Tanya said, don't hesitate to say hello at the conference. I will be there. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Great. Maybe any final advice from the panel for our audience? Anything you think you missed saying or would encourage people?
Well, one thing we didn't talk about, it's not networking, but like I think for me at least, the conferences have also been a very nice place to actually to get to know my lab and my team much better. You spend a lot of time together. They're the people that you know the most, so you end up kind of moving around the conference together. And in a lot of cases, you might even like be in the same hotel, so you walk together home and go to the socials together. So it's also a nice opportunity to get to know your actual lab, maybe in a different context that it's not the day-to-day work. So yeah, just to give also some value to that.
Yeah, that's great. If you're lucky enough, your lab is attending. I'm usually the only one.
Course.
That's frightening. There's a question for you, Maureen. If you wanna.
Yeah, you will be able to change your slides by yourself. And nice to see that there is people from the ISC Young that will be attending the conference and that are here today. And yeah, and my final advice, I guess, is to have fun, because conferences are one of the most fun parts of being researchers, to go to some country. And so take the opportunity to make some new friends and do some sightseeing. And yeah, it's not just the conference and the scientific parts of your research. So yeah, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I stand by that. First year I cannot attend and I'm feeling really sad about it. So do make the most of it. I think someone was asking on the chat.
Do you have tips for if you are the only one from your lab attending? It feels like everyone will have people they know to eat with or chat with.
Well, I think just attending these epilogue session is a good way to already like have someone. So you now at least know 2 or 3 people who will be attending that you can actually reach out. And I think sometimes this is a bit of a snowball effect. So I don't know, you'll meet Tanya or Marine and they'll introduce you to someone else. And then when you see that someone else, the coffee break, you can approach them to chat. So yeah, I think try to know at least someone who is there. That's always useful. You don't have to be best friends, but at least someone, a face that is familiar that you can go say hi, and then just ask, hang around with them and ask them to introduce you to other people. Most of the times it will happen naturally. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also meet people by attending in some sessions. Last year, I met a French person who says that at the end of my oral presentation, oh, I'm working with the same data, so we can speak about it. And at the end, we eat together. So yeah, attend session, it's a good opportunity too.
Yes, and Sonia, you have Emmanuel saying already that she's attending also alone. But I'm not sure, Emmanuel, if you're, I think Sonia, I had quite some email exchange with you. I think Sonia is going to the ISEE Chile, and I think Emmanuel, you're going to the Young Conference, but maybe also the Chile one. But yes, Sonia, feel free to reach out to me and Marine, and there'll be always people, I think, looking a bit lonely, and maybe just go to them, and I think they'll really appreciate to be contacted, right? So Max, I don't know if you wanted to say something. I just saw that you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, it's I guess like my final advice actually is somewhat relevant to Diana's question about collaborations. But yeah, I have had some really interesting collaborations sort of become ideated at the conference and then grow like later onwards after the conference. So I would say, one of the things, I guess my final like suggestion is like if you meet somebody and you have like an interesting talk, just try to like, follow up on that and like keep the connection alive after the conference so that you can make the best out of, the the networking that you did and sort of see what could be possible afterwards as well.
Right. So I think I have to end the session because we're coming towards the end. So, well, thank you for everyone who attended this webinar today and the questions, and especially a big thanks to our panel, of course. Max, I hope you will feel better soon. And I can't, emphasize more that please reach out to Marine and me, and there are so more SNRN members there, like from the steering committee. So another tip could be have a look at the images of us on the webpage, the ISEE webpage, and you'll recognize our faces when we're there. And then by then you already, I guess, like that, you'll know 8 people already, I think, who are coming. And there will be another epilogue webinar in around 1 month on mental health. So please look out for the announcement of that one on our social media platforms. And yes, thanks again for joining us, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good luck.
everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy the conferences.